There's a conversation happening inside you right now that could heal your body, calm your mind, and transform your entire life. But here's what's tragic. You've been ignoring this conversation for years, maybe decades. Your breath has been trying to teach you the secret of inner healing, and today you're finally going to listen. I'm Joseph Murphy, and for decades I've studied the connection between mind, body, and spirit. What I've discovered about breath will challenge everything you think you know about healing. See, most people breathe unconsciously about 20,000 times a day without a single intentional thought. But when you learn to communicate with your breath, when you understand its secret language, something miraculous happens. Your body remembers how to heal itself. Your mind finds peace it's been searching for. Your spirit awakens to its true power. This isn't about meditation techniques or breathing exercises you've heard before. This is about recognizing that your breath is conscious, intelligent, and desperately wants to partner with you in creating the life you deserve. Over the next 2.5 hours, I'm going to share with you the secret energy of inner healing that flows through every single breath. We'll explore how your breath carries messages from your subconscious mind, how it can dissolve years of stored trauma, and how it becomes your most trusted guide in creating vibrant health. You'll discover why most healing approaches only work temporarily, and how breath-based healing creates permanent transformation. I'll show you the specific conversations you can have with your breath, the ancient wisdom that modern science is finally proving, and most importantly, how to activate this healing partnership starting today. But first, let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly paid attention to your breath? Not controlled it, not analyzed it, but simply listened to what it was telling you? Because your breath has been waiting for this moment, waiting for you to remember this sacred conversation. And that conversation starts now. Here's something that might surprise you. Your breath has been trying to tell you secrets about your health, your emotions, and your life path for years. But we've been trained to ignore these messages. We've been taught that breathing is just an automatic function, something our body does without our involvement. What if I told you that's the biggest misconception standing between you and perfect health? There are two types of people walking around right now. One group treats their breath like background noise, something that just happens while they focus on everything else. They breathe shallow, stressed breaths when they're anxious, hold their breath when they're concentrating, and never once consider that their breathing pattern might be the key to unlocking their body's healing potential. The other group has discovered something extraordinary. They've learned that their breath is actually intelligent, that it responds to their thoughts, emotions, and intentions in ways that can literally transform their physical reality. The difference between these two groups? The second group understands that breath is not just air moving in and out of your lungs. It's a living, intelligent energy that's constantly communicating with every cell in your body. And once you learn to read these communications, once you understand what your breath is trying to tell you, everything changes. Let me share something that happened to me years ago that completely shifted my understanding of breath. I was going through a particularly difficult time in my life, dealing with chronic fatigue that doctors couldn't explain, stress that seemed to have no end, and a general feeling that my body was working against me rather than with me. I'd tried everything, different diets, exercise routines, supplements, even therapy. Nothing seemed to create lasting change. One morning, feeling particularly frustrated, I sat down and just breathed. But instead of trying to control my breath or make it deeper or slower, I simply observed it. And as I watched, I noticed something fascinating. My breath wasn't just random. It had patterns. When I thought about my work stress, my breath became shallow and rapid. When I remembered a peaceful moment from my childhood, it naturally deepened and slowed. But here's what shocked me. When I started talking to my breath, when I began treating it like a conscious partner rather than an automatic function, it started talking back. I know that might sound strange, but stay with me. Your breath responds to your thoughts faster than your conscious mind can even register those thoughts. Think about the last time you were startled. Your breath changed instantly, didn't it? Or when you saw something beautiful and took that deep, appreciative breath, Your body knew to do that before your mind even processed what you were seeing. This isn't just some mystical concept I'm sharing with you. Science has proven that your breathing pattern directly affects your nervous system, your hormone production, your immune function, and even your genetic expression. When you breathe in a state of stress, short, shallow breaths, you're literally sending signals to every cell in your body that you're in danger. Your body responds by shutting down healing processes and going into survival mode. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you consciously shift your breathing pattern, when you breathe like someone who is calm, peaceful, and healthy, your body gets the message and starts producing the chemistry of health and healing. Your nervous system shifts into rest and repair mode. Your immune system strengthens. Your body remembers how to heal itself. Now, most people stop there. They learn a breathing technique, they practice it for a few minutes a day, and yes, they feel better. But what I discovered goes far beyond technique. What I discovered is that your breath is actually conscious, it's aware. And when you start treating it as a partner in your healing rather than just a tool you use occasionally, that's when the real magic happens. Think about it this way. Your breath has been with you since the moment you were born. It's never left your side. It's been there through every emotion you've ever felt, every experience you've ever had, every challenge you've ever faced. Your breath knows you better than anyone else in your life. It knows your patterns, your triggers, your deepest wounds, and your greatest potential for healing. But here's what most people miss. Your breath doesn't just know about you, it knows how to heal you. Every single breath carries intelligent energy that's designed to restore balance, clear blockages, and activate your body's natural healing systems. The problem is, we've never been taught to listen to what our breath is trying to tell us. Your breath is constantly giving you information about your emotional state, your physical condition, and even your spiritual well-being. When you're holding on to anger, your breath holds tension in your chest. When you're carrying grief, your breath becomes heavy and shallow. When you're excited and joyful, your breath naturally becomes light and flowing. But most of us are so disconnected from our breath that we miss these vital communications. I remember working with a woman who'd been dealing with chronic back pain for over a decade. Doctors couldn't find anything structurally wrong, but the pain was very real and significantly impacting her life. When I taught her to start observing her breath patterns, she made a startling discovery. Every time she thought about a particular relationship in her life, a relationship where she felt unsupported and taken advantage of, her breathing would become constricted right around her lower back area. It was as if her breath was showing her exactly where she was holding the emotional stress that was creating her physical pain. But here's the beautiful part. When she started having conversations with her breath, when she began asking it to help her release this old emotional pattern, her back pain started to disappear. Not temporarily, but permanently. Her breath literally guided her through the healing process. This is what I mean when I say your breath is intelligent. It doesn't just respond to your thoughts and emotions. It actively participates in your healing when you invite it to. Your breath knows how to move stuck energy. It knows how to release old trauma. It knows how to restore balance to your nervous system. But you have to invite this partnership. You have to start treating your breath as the conscious, intelligent ally that it is. Now, you might be thinking, Joseph, this sounds too simple. If breathing could heal everything, wouldn't everyone know about it? And that's a fair question. The truth is, breathing can't heal everything overnight, but conscious breathing partnership can heal far more than most people ever imagine. The reason everyone doesn't know about it is because we live in a culture that's completely disconnected from the wisdom of the body. We've been taught to look outside ourselves for healing, to pills, procedures, and practitioners. And while these things certainly have their place, we've forgotten that our body comes equipped with the most sophisticated healing system ever created. Your breath is the key that activates this system. But only when you learn to work with it consciously, intentionally, and with deep respect for its intelligence. Here's something that will probably shock you. Your breath responds to your thoughts before you're even aware you're thinking them. Scientists have discovered that changes in breathing pattern can be detected up to several seconds before a person reports having a conscious thought or emotion. What this means is that your breath is actually ahead of your conscious mind. It's already preparing your body for whatever you're about to experience. This is why conscious breathing partnership is so powerful. When you start communicating with your breath, you're actually working with the part of your intelligence that's faster and more comprehensive than your thinking mind. Your breath sees the bigger picture. It understands the connections between your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations in ways that your conscious mind often misses. Let me give you a concrete example of how this works. Have you ever noticed that when you're about to enter a stressful situation, maybe walking into a difficult meeting or having a challenging conversation, your breathing starts to change before you even begin? Your breath is preparing your body for what it senses is coming. But here's the key. When you're in conscious partnership with your breath, you can ask it to prepare your body differently. Instead of letting your breath automatically shift into stress mode, you can communicate with it. You can say, I'm about to enter this situation, and I want to stay calm and centered. Help me breathe in a way that keeps my nervous system balanced and my mind clear. And your breath will respond. It will start breathing you in a pattern that supports the state you want to be in rather than the state you're afraid you might end up in. This isn't just positive thinking or wishful thinking. This is working with the actual intelligence of your breath to create the internal conditions that support your highest good. Your breath wants to help you succeed. It wants to help you heal. It wants to help you thrive. But it needs your conscious participation to do its job most effectively. The more you practice this kind of conscious breathing partnership, the more sensitive you become to the subtle communications your breath is always sending you. You start to notice how your breath changes when you're around certain people in certain environments or thinking certain thoughts. And you start to use this information to make better choices for your health and well-being. For instance, you might notice that your breath becomes constricted and shallow when you're around someone who drains your energy. That's your breath telling you that this interaction is affecting your nervous system in a negative way. Or you might notice that your breath naturally deepens and flows when you're in nature or engaged in creative work. That's your breath telling you that these activities support your healing and vitality. But the real magic happens when you start asking your breath for guidance, when you treat it as the wise counselor that it is. Because your breath doesn't just respond to what's happening in the moment, it can actually guide you toward the experiences, relationships, and choices that will support your highest healing and growth. I've seen people use breathing partnership to make major life decisions, to heal from trauma, to overcome addictions, and to create levels of health and vitality they never thought possible. And it all starts with this simple recognition. Your breath is not just something your body does automatically. It's an intelligent partner that's been waiting your entire life for you to remember how to communicate with it. When you're dealing with physical pain, your breath knows exactly where the blockages are and how to clear them. When you're struggling with emotional challenges, your breath knows how to move stuck emotional energy and help you release what's no longer serving you. When you're facing difficult decisions, your breath knows which choices will lead to greater alignment with your true purpose and which ones will take you away from it. I worked with a man who'd been struggling with chronic anxiety for years. He tried medication, therapy, meditation, everything he could think of, but nothing provided lasting relief. When I taught him to start communicating with his breath, he discovered something remarkable. His breath showed him that his anxiety wasn't actually about current situations. It was old fear energy that had been stuck in his system since childhood trauma. His breath guided him through a process of releasing this old fear energy and replacing it with energy patterns of safety and confidence. But more than that, his breath taught him to recognize the early signs when anxiety was starting to build, and it showed him exactly how to breathe to prevent anxiety attacks before they could take hold. Within a few months, he went from having daily anxiety attacks to being completely free of anxiety. But the transformation went deeper than just symptom relief. He became more confident, more creative, more willing to take healthy risks in his career and relationships. His entire life changed because he learned to partner with his breath's wisdom. This is what becomes possible when you recognize that your breath is not just a biological function, but an intelligent guide that wants to help you create the best possible life. Your breath has access to information about you that your conscious mind doesn't have. It knows your optimal breathing patterns for different activities and emotional states. It knows which foods, environments, and relationships support your well-being and which ones drain your energy. But perhaps most importantly, your breath knows your deepest potential. It knows the gifts you came here to share, the contributions you're meant to make, the person you're capable of becoming. And when you learn to listen to its guidance, when you learn to trust its wisdom, it will guide you step by step toward the fullest expression of who you're meant to be. Now that you understand your breath is intelligent and constantly communicating with you, let me show you something even more profound. Your breath isn't just sending you information. It's actively participating in a complex communication network that includes every cell, organ, and system in your body. Think of your breath as the conductor of an incredible orchestra, coordinating a healing symphony that's playing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When you breathe consciously, when you invite your breath to be your healing partner, you're not just changing the oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in your blood. You're actually sending specific instructions to your entire nervous system. You're telling your brain to produce different neurotransmitters. You're signaling your endocrine system to release different hormones. You're instructing your immune system to function more effectively. Here's something most people don't realize. Every time you take a conscious, intentional breath, you're literally rewiring your brain. Neuroscientists have discovered that focused breathing practices create new neural pathways and strengthen the connections between different areas of the brain. The area responsible for executive function, your ability to make good decisions and stay calm under pressure, becomes more active and more connected to other brain regions when you breathe consciously. But it goes even deeper than that. Your breath is in constant communication with your heart, and your heart is in constant communication with your brain. When you breathe in harmony with your heart's natural rhythm, you create what scientists call heart rate variability coherence. This is a state where your heart, mind, and emotions are in energetic alignment, creating optimal conditions for healing, learning, and peak performance. I want you to imagine for a moment what your life would be like if you had access to this level of internal coordination all the time. What if your nervous system was always balanced? What if your immune system was always functioning optimally? What if your brain was always producing the exact chemistry you need to feel peaceful, confident, and healthy? This isn't some fantasy. This is what happens when you learn to work in conscious partnership with your breath. The communication network I'm describing isn't just happening in your head or your chest. It extends throughout your entire body. Your breath affects your digestive system, helping your body absorb nutrients more effectively and eliminate toxins more efficiently. It affects your muscular system, helping tight areas relax and weak areas strengthen. It affects your circulatory system, improving blood flow to areas that need healing. But here's where it gets really interesting. Your breath also communicates with what scientists are now calling your second brain, the extensive network of neurons in your gut. This enteric nervous system contains more nerve cells than your spinal cord, and it's in constant communication with your brain through the vagus nerve. When you breathe consciously, you're stimulating this vagus nerve, which activates your body's rest and repair systems and helps your gut produce neurotransmitters like serotonin that affect your mood, sleep, and overall sense of well-being. What this means is that conscious breathing doesn't just help you feel calmer in the moment. It actually helps your body produce more of the chemistry of happiness, peace, and vitality. Your breath is literally a pharmacy that's always open, always available, and always ready to dispense exactly the medicine your body needs. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, if this is all true, why don't I feel this communication happening? And that's a great question. The reason most people don't feel this intricate communication network is because we've been breathing unconsciously for so long that we've become numb to the subtle sensations and signals. Our body is constantly sending us. It's like living next to a beautiful symphony orchestra, but having the volume turned down so low that all you hear is background noise. The music is still playing, the communication is still happening, but you're not consciously aware of it. Conscious breathing is like turning up the volume and beginning to hear the incredible complexity and beauty of what's been there all along. The more you practice conscious breathing, the more sensitive you become to these internal communications. You start to feel the subtle ways your breath affects your heart rate, your muscle tension, your digestive function, even your mental clarity. And once you can feel these connections, You can start to work with them intentionally to create the internal conditions that support whatever you want to experience in your life. For example, if you want to feel more confident, you can breathe in a pattern that signals confidence to your nervous system. If you want to heal from an illness, you can breathe in a way that optimizes your immune function. If you want to sleep better, you can breathe in a pattern that activates your parasympathetic nervous system and prepares your body for deep, restorative rest. But here's the key. This isn't about forcing your breath into specific patterns. This is about inviting your breath to be your partner in creating the internal conditions you desire. When you approach breathing as a partnership rather than a technique, your breath will guide you to exactly the pattern that's most beneficial for you in any given moment. This brings me to something crucial that most breathing approaches completely miss. Your optimal breathing pattern isn't the same as everyone else's optimal breathing pattern. Your breath has its own intelligence, its own wisdom, its own knowledge of what you need. When you try to force your breath into someone else's pattern, you're missing the opportunity to discover your breath's unique way of supporting your healing and growth. This is why I don't teach specific breathing techniques in the traditional sense. Instead, I teach people how to communicate with their breath, how to ask it what they need, and how to listen for its response. Your breath will teach you to breathe in a way that's perfect for your body, your nervous system, your emotional patterns, and your healing needs. I remember working with a woman who'd been practicing a popular breathing technique for months without experiencing the benefits that others reported. She was frustrated and ready to give up on breathing work entirely. When I taught her to start communicating with her breath instead of trying to control it, she discovered that her body needed a completely different pattern than what she'd been practicing. Within days of breathing in partnership with her breath rather than forcing it into a prescribed pattern, she started experiencing the profound healing and peace she'd been seeking. This is the difference between treating your breath as a tool and treating it as a partner. When you use breathing techniques, you're essentially giving your breath orders and hoping it complies. When you breathe in partnership, you're inviting your breath to share its wisdom with you and co-create the experience you desire. The communication network I've been describing, this incredible coordination between your breath, your nervous system, your brain, your heart, and every cell in your body, this network becomes exponentially more powerful when you shift from trying to control your breath to partnering with it. Because when you partner with your breath, you're not just accessing your own limited knowledge about breathing. You're accessing the infinite intelligence that's been breathing you since the day you were born. This intelligence knows things about your body that your conscious mind doesn't know. It knows where you're holding old trauma. It knows which organs need more support. It knows what emotional patterns are ready to be released. It knows how to coordinate healing in ways that are far more sophisticated than anything you could plan or control. But the most beautiful part of this communication network is that it's always available to you. You don't need special equipment or specific locations or perfect conditions. Your breath is with you every moment of every day, ready to be your partner in healing, ready to share its wisdom, ready to help you create the internal conditions that support your highest good. The question isn't whether this communication network exists. Science has proven that it does. The question is whether you're going to learn to work with it consciously or whether you're going to continue breathing unconsciously and miss out on one of the most powerful healing resources you have. Most people go through their entire lives never realizing that they have this incredible healing partner always available to them. They struggle with health issues, emotional challenges, and life difficulties while their breath sits quietly in the background, holding the keys to the very solutions they're seeking everywhere else. But you don't have to be one of those people. You can start right now in this very moment to begin developing a conscious relationship with your breath. You can start paying attention to what it's telling you. You can start asking it for guidance. You can start inviting it to be your partner in creating the health, happiness, and vitality you deserve. And here's something I want you to remember as we move forward. This partnership gets stronger and more sophisticated the more you practice it. What I'm going to share with you next will show you exactly how to have these healing conversations with your breath. But the foundation we've just built, understanding that your breath is intelligent and that it's in constant communication with your entire body, this foundation is what makes everything else possible. Your breath has been waiting for this moment. It's been waiting for you to remember that it's not just air moving in and out of your lungs, but a conscious, intelligent partner that holds the keys to your deepest healing. And now that you understand this truth, everything changes. What I'm about to share with you next might seem counterintuitive at first, but it's the key that unlocks your breath's full healing potential. Most people think communication is about talking, but the deepest healing conversations with your breath actually begin with listening. There are two types of people trying to heal right now. One group is constantly trying to fix, control, and change their breathing. They're forcing their breath into patterns they've read about, timing their inhales and exhales, and getting frustrated when their breath doesn't cooperate with their plans. The other group has discovered something revolutionary. They've learned that their breath is already trying to heal them, and their job isn't to control it, but to listen to what it's trying to say, and then respond as a caring partner would. The difference between these two approaches is the difference between giving orders to someone who doesn't want to take them and having a meaningful conversation with someone who genuinely wants to help you. When you try to control your breath, you're essentially saying, I know better than you do how you should behave. But when you listen to your breath first, you're saying, I trust your wisdom, and I want to understand what you're trying to tell me. Here's what changed everything for me. I stopped trying to breathe correctly and started asking my breath what it needed. I stopped imposing patterns on my breath and started letting my breath show me the patterns that would serve my healing. This shift from controlling to listening, from commanding to partnering, opened up a whole new world of healing possibilities that I never knew existed. Now, I want to teach you the 4 sacred conversations that form the foundation of breath partnership. These aren't techniques to practice, they're ways of communicating that allow your breath to share its wisdom with you and guide you toward exactly what you need for healing. The first conversation is the conversation of request. This is where you learn to ask your breath for help rather than demanding that it behave in a certain way. Instead of saying, I'm going to breathe slowly and deeply now, you say, my breath, I'm feeling anxious right now. Can you help me find a breathing pattern that will calm my nervous system? Then you listen. You pay attention to how your breath wants to respond to that request. The beautiful thing about making requests rather than giving commands is that your breath will often guide you to patterns that are much more effective than anything you could have planned. Your breath knows your nervous system better than your conscious mind does. It knows exactly what rhythm, depth, and pattern will be most beneficial for you in any given moment. I remember teaching this to a woman who'd been struggling with panic attacks. She'd learned various breathing techniques, but when panic hit, her conscious mind would go blank and she couldn't remember what she was supposed to do. When I taught her to simply ask her breath for help during a panic attack, something amazing happened. Her breath immediately began breathing her in a pattern that was completely different from any technique she'd learned, but it calmed her nervous system faster and more completely than anything she'd ever experienced. This is the power of request-based breathing. You're not trying to override your breath's natural intelligence. You're inviting it to use that intelligence on your behalf. You're treating your breath as the wise counselor that it is, rather than the servant you're trying to train. The second conversation is the conversation of gratitude. This might sound simple, but it's one of the most powerful healing tools you have. When you consciously thank your breath for all the ways it supports you, you're not just being polite, you're actually strengthening the communication channels between your conscious mind and your breath's intelligence. Think about it. Your breath has been taking care of you 24 hours a day since the moment you were born. It's never taken a vacation, never called in sick, never asked for a day off. It's been there through every challenge, every celebration, every moment of your life, quietly doing its job of keeping you alive and supporting your well-being. But how often do you thank your breath for this incredible service? How often do you acknowledge the miracle that's happening with every inhale and exhale? When you start expressing genuine gratitude to your breath, you begin to shift from taking it for granted to recognizing it as the faithful partner it's always been. And here's what's fascinating. When you express gratitude to your breath, it begins to breathe you differently. It's as if your breath starts working even harder on your behalf when it feels appreciated and acknowledged. People who practice gratitude-based breathing often report that their breath begins to feel more supportive, more nourishing, more healing. Let me share a story that illustrates this beautifully. I worked with a man who'd been dealing with chronic respiratory issues for years. His relationship with his breath had become adversarial. He was frustrated with it, angry at it for not working properly, constantly fighting against it. When I taught him to start expressing gratitude to his breath, everything shifted. At first, he resisted the idea. How could he be grateful for something that was causing him so much trouble? But I encouraged him to look deeper, to recognize all the ways his breath was still supporting him despite the challenges. His breath was still keeping him alive. It was still doing its best to provide oxygen to his cells. It was still working to heal and restore balance, even under difficult circumstances. As he began to acknowledge these truths and express genuine gratitude for his breath's efforts, something remarkable happened. His breathing became easier. His respiratory symptoms improved. But more importantly, his entire relationship with his body transformed from one of frustration to one of partnership and appreciation. This is the power of gratitude in breath work. It shifts you from being an adversary of your breath to being its ally. It creates the emotional environment in which healing becomes not just possible but inevitable. The third conversation is the conversation of release. This is where you learn to work with your breath to let go of what no longer serves you. Your breath is incredibly skilled at helping you release old emotions, limiting beliefs, physical tension, and energetic blockages. But it can't do this work without your conscious participation. The conversation of release begins with identifying what you want to let go of. Maybe it's an old hurt that you've been carrying in your heart. Maybe it's fear that's been limiting your life. Maybe it's physical tension that's been creating pain in your body. Whatever it is, you can ask your breath to help you release it. Here's how this works. You bring whatever you want to release into your conscious awareness, and then you ask your breath to help you let it go. You might say something like, "My breath, I've been carrying this old anger for so long and I'm ready to release it. Will you help me breathe it out of my system?" Then you pay attention to how your breath wants to move to support this release. Often your breath will guide you to exhale more fully, or to sigh deeply, or to breathe in a pattern that helps move stuck energy out of your body. Sometimes the release happens immediately, and sometimes it's a gradual process that unfolds over multiple breathing sessions. But your breath always knows the perfect way to support whatever release is ready to happen. I worked with a woman who'd been carrying grief from the loss of her mother for over 5 years. The grief had become stuck in her chest, creating both emotional pain and physical tightness that made it difficult for her to breathe freely. When we worked together using the conversation of release, her breath guided her through a beautiful process of letting go. Her breath showed her how to breathe the grief out through her exhales while breathing love and peace in through her inhales. It wasn't about getting rid of her love for her mother or forgetting the loss. It was about releasing the stuck energy of grief that was preventing her from breathing freely and living fully. The process took several sessions, but gradually her breath became easier, her chest opened up, and she found that she could remember her mother with love rather than pain. Her breath had literally guided her through a healing process that transformed her relationship with loss and grief. This is what becomes possible when you learn to work with your breath for release. You don't have to carry old emotional baggage forever. You don't have to live with physical tension that serves no purpose. Your breath can help you let go of anything that's preventing you from experiencing the freedom and vitality that's your birthright. The fourth conversation is the conversation of empowerment. This is where you work with your breath to call in and embody the qualities you want to experience more of in your life. Just as your breath can help you release what you don't want, it can also help you cultivate and strengthen what you do want. Maybe you want to feel more confident, more peaceful, more energetic, or more loving. You can ask your breath to help you breathe these qualities into your being. You might say, "My breath, I want to feel more confident today. Will you help me breathe in a way that embodies confidence?" Then you listen for how your breath wants to support this intention. What's amazing about empowerment breathing is that your breath will often guide you to patterns that actually change your body chemistry in ways that support the qualities you're calling in. When you breathe confidence, your body starts producing the neurotransmitters and hormones that create confident feelings. When you breathe peace, your nervous system shifts into the patterns that generate peaceful states. I remember working with a young man who was terrified of public speaking. He'd been asked to give a presentation at work, and the anxiety was overwhelming. When I taught him to use empowerment breathing to call in confidence and calm presence, his breath guided him to a pattern that was completely different from his normal, anxious breathing. As he practiced breathing confidence in the days leading up to his presentation, something remarkable happened. Not only did his anxiety decrease, but he began to genuinely feel more confident in all areas of his life. His posture changed, his voice became stronger, and he started taking on challenges he'd previously avoided. The presentation went beautifully, but more importantly, he'd learned to use his breath to access inner resources he didn't know he had. He discovered that confidence wasn't something he either had or didn't have. It was something he could cultivate through conscious partnership with his breath. Now, here's something crucial. These 4 conversations aren't separate techniques that you practice one at a time. They're aspects of an ongoing dialogue with your breath that can flow naturally from one to another depending on what you need in any given moment. You might start with gratitude, move into a request for help with something specific, work with release around an old pattern, and then use empowerment breathing to call in what you want to experience instead. The key is to stay in communication with your breath throughout this process. Keep asking what it needs. Keep listening for its guidance. Keep treating it as the intelligent partner that it is. Your breath will orchestrate this healing process in ways that are far more sophisticated than anything you could plan or control. But here's where most people get stuck. They try to think their way through these conversations instead of feeling their way through them. Communicating with your breath isn't a mental exercise. It's a felt sense experience. You're not trying to figure out the right thing to say or the correct way to breathe. You're opening your awareness to the subtle communications that are always flowing between your conscious mind and your breath's intelligence. This is why listening is so important. Before you make a request, before you express gratitude, before you ask for help with release or empowerment, you need to tune in to what your breath is already telling you. What's its natural rhythm right now? How deep or shallow is it? Where do you feel it most strongly in your body? What quality or feeling does it have? When you start from this place of listening and awareness, your conversations with your breath become much more meaningful and effective. You're not imposing your agenda on your breath. You're joining an ongoing conversation that your breath has been trying to have with you for years. And the more you practice these conversations, the more sophisticated they become. You'll start to notice that your breath has different ways of communicating different types of information. You'll learn to recognize when your breath is trying to alert you to something important, when it's offering to help you with healing, when it's guiding you toward what you need. This is the beginning of a partnership that can transform every aspect of your life. Your breath becomes your constant companion in healing, your trusted advisor in making decisions, your most reliable guide to creating the internal conditions that support your highest good. But it all starts with these 4 sacred conversations: request, gratitude, release, and empowerment. What I want you to understand is that these conversations aren't just feel-good practices that make you more relaxed. They're powerful healing tools that work with your body's natural intelligence to create real, lasting change. When you communicate with your breath in these ways, you're not just changing how you breathe, you're changing how your entire nervous system functions, how your brain processes information, how your immune system operates, and how your body heals itself. This is why breath partnership is so much more powerful than breathing techniques. Techniques work with your breath from the outside they impose patterns and hope for results. Partnership works from the inside out. It activates your breath's own healing intelligence and allows that intelligence to guide the process. But the real magic happens when you start combining these conversations in response to what's actually happening in your life. When you're facing a challenge, you might start with a request for guidance, move into gratitude for your breath's support, work with release around any fear or resistance you're feeling, and then use empowerment breathing to embody the qualities you need to handle the situation skillfully. Your breath will guide you through this process in exactly the way that serves your highest good. It will show you what to release, what to call in, how to move through whatever you're facing with greater ease and grace. This isn't just breathing, this is partnering with the wisdom of your body to navigate life more skillfully. And here's something beautiful. The more you practice these conversations, the more automatic they become. You don't have to remember complex techniques or follow complicated protocols. You simply tune into your breath, notice what it's trying to tell you, and respond as a caring partner would. This becomes a natural way of being rather than something you have to remember to do. What we've explored so far is just the beginning. These 4 sacred conversations open the door to a much deeper level of healing partnership with your breath. As you become more fluent in your breath's language, as you learn to trust its guidance more completely, you'll discover that your breath can guide you to healing in ways that go far beyond what you've imagined possible. Your breath doesn't just want to help you feel better in the moment, it wants to help you transform the underlying patterns that create suffering and limitation in your life. It wants to help you access states of consciousness where healing happens naturally and effortlessly. It wants to be your partner in creating a life of vibrant health, deep peace, and unlimited possibility. But before we go there, there's something crucial you need to understand about how to listen for your breath's responses to these conversations. Because your breath is always responding, you just need to know how to recognize and interpret what it's telling you. Now, here's where most people miss the magic entirely. They start these conversations with their breath, they make their requests or express their gratitude, but then they expect the response to come in words or thoughts. They're listening with their mind when they should be listening with their body. Your breath doesn't speak in English or any other language. It speaks in sensations, in subtle shifts, in feelings and qualities that you sense rather than think. When you ask your breath for help, the response might come as a natural deepening of your inhale, or a spontaneous sigh, or a gentle shifting of where you feel the breath most strongly in your body. Let me give you a concrete example. A woman I worked with was dealing with chronic shoulder tension that had been bothering her for months. When I taught her to ask her breath for help with this tension, something beautiful happened. She made her request. "My breath, can you help me release this tension in my shoulders?" And then she waited and listened. At first, nothing seemed to happen. But after a few moments, she noticed that her breath naturally wanted to move higher up in her chest, almost as if it was breathing directly into her shoulder area. She didn't force this. She simply allowed her breath to breathe her in this new pattern. Within minutes, she felt the tension beginning to soften and release. But here's the key. She didn't think her way to this solution. She didn't analyze or plan or try to figure out the right thing to do. She simply made her request and then opened her awareness to however her breath wanted to respond. Her breath guided her to exactly the pattern that would serve her healing, but the guidance came through felt sense rather than mental instruction. This is what I mean when I say you need to listen with your body rather than your mind. Your breath's responses come through physical sensations, through shifts in rhythm or depth or location, through spontaneous movements or sounds that want to emerge. These responses are often subtle at first, especially if you're not used to paying attention to these kinds of communications. But the more you practice listening in this way, the more obvious your breath's communications become. You start to notice that when you express gratitude to your breath, it often responds by becoming more spacious and flowing. When you ask for help with release, it might guide you to exhale more fully or to make sounds that help move stuck energy. When you request empowerment, it might shift to a pattern that feels more energizing and uplifting. The challenge for most people is that we've been taught to ignore these subtle body communications in favor of mental analysis. We've learned to think our way through problems rather than feeling our way through them. But your breath's intelligence operates at the level of felt sense, not logical reasoning. This is why it's so important to approach these conversations with curiosity rather than expectation. You're not trying to get a specific response from your breath. You're opening yourself to receive whatever response wants to emerge. Sometimes the response is immediate and obvious. Sometimes it's subtle and requires patient attention to notice. Sometimes the response comes not in the moment, but later in the day, when you suddenly find yourself breathing differently without any conscious effort. I remember working with a man who was struggling with anxiety. He learned to have conversations with his breath, but he was getting frustrated because he wasn't getting the dramatic, immediate responses he expected. I taught him to pay attention to much more subtle communications. The slight easing of tension in his chest when he expressed gratitude, the gentle slowing of his heart rate when he made a request for calm, the almost imperceptible deepening of his breath when he worked with release. As he learned to notice and appreciate these subtle responses, something beautiful began to happen. His breath started responding more dramatically. It was as if his breath was testing whether he was truly paying attention, and once it knew he was listening, it became much more communicative and helpful. This is a pattern I've seen over and over again. When people first start communicating with their breath, the responses are often very subtle. But as you demonstrate that you're truly listening, that you're paying attention to and appreciating even the smallest communications, your breath begins to respond more obviously and more powerfully. Think of it like developing a relationship with a shy friend. At first, they might only give you small hints about what they're thinking or feeling. But as they learn to trust that you're really interested in what they have to say, they start sharing more openly and more directly. Your breath works the same way. This is why patience and trust are so important in developing breath partnership. You're not just learning a technique, you're building a relationship. And like any meaningful relationship, it takes time to develop depth and trust. But once that foundation is established, the communication becomes rich, nuanced, and incredibly helpful. Now, let me share with you some of the common mistakes that block people from hearing their breath's responses. The biggest mistake is trying too hard. When you're straining to hear your breath's communication, when you're analyzing every sensation and trying to figure out what it means, you actually create tension that blocks the very communications you're trying to receive. The key is what I call relaxed attention. You're paying attention, you're listening, but you're not grasping or forcing. You're creating space for communication to emerge rather than demanding that it happen in a particular way or time frame. This relaxed attention is itself a skill that gets easier with practice. Another common mistake is judging your breath's responses. People often think their breath should respond in a certain way, and when it doesn't, they assume they're doing something wrong. But your breath's intelligence is far more sophisticated than your conscious expectations. Sometimes your breath needs to move through old patterns before it can establish new ones. Sometimes it needs to release before it can restore. Sometimes it needs to slow down before it can speed up. Trust your breath's timing and wisdom, even when its responses don't match what you think should happen. Your breath knows things about your healing process that your conscious mind doesn't know. It can see the bigger picture in ways that your thinking mind often misses. I worked with a woman who was using breath partnership to heal from trauma. She expected her breath to become immediately calm and peaceful when she worked with release, but instead her breath initially became more agitated and irregular. She was ready to give up, thinking she was doing something wrong, but I encouraged her to trust her breath's process. What we discovered was that her breath needed to move through and express the old trauma patterns before it could release them. Her breath was actually guiding her through a healing process that was much more thorough than anything she could have planned. Once she learned to trust her breath's wisdom, even when it didn't match her expectations, her healing progressed rapidly and completely. This brings me to something crucial about listening for your breath's responses. Sometimes the response comes not in the immediate moment, but in how your breath behaves throughout the day. You might have a conversation with your breath in the morning, and then notice later that you're naturally breathing differently during stressful situations, or that you spontaneously take deeper breaths when you need them, or that your sleep breathing becomes more restorative. Your breath's intelligence works on multiple timescales. Sometimes it responds instantly to your communications, and sometimes it integrates your requests over hours or days, gradually shifting your breathing patterns in ways that support your intentions. Both types of responses are valuable and important. The key is to stay curious and observant throughout your day. Notice how your breath behaves in different situations. Pay attention to spontaneous changes in your breathing pattern. Observe how your breath responds to different people, environments, and activities. All of this is communication from your breath about what supports your well-being and what doesn't. This ongoing observation helps you become more fluent in your breath's language. You start to recognize your breath's way of saying, yes, this is good for you, and its way of saying, no, this isn't serving you. You learn to distinguish between your breath's signal that you need to release something and its signal that you need to call something in. But here's something that might surprise you. The most powerful communications from your breath often come not when you're actively trying to communicate with it, But when you're simply living your life with an open, receptive awareness of your breath's presence and wisdom, when you maintain this kind of ongoing partnership with your breath, it becomes your constant guide and advisor. You start making decisions based not just on what makes logical sense, but on what your breath tells you will serve your highest good. You begin to navigate life with the support of an intelligence that's always present, always wise, and always working on your behalf. This is the foundation of living in breath partnership, not just having occasional conversations with your breath, but maintaining an ongoing dialogue that informs and supports every aspect of your life. And as we move forward, I'm going to show you how this partnership can guide you to healing that goes far beyond what you've imagined possible. Because what I've shared with you so far is just the beginning. Once you've established this foundation of communication with your breath, once you've learned to listen for and trust its responses, you're ready to discover how your breath can become medicine for your body, your mind, and your spirit. Your breath has been waiting for this moment, waiting for you to remember how to have this conversation, waiting for you to trust its wisdom, waiting for you to invite it to be your partner in creating the health and happiness you deserve. And now that you know how to listen, everything becomes possible. What I'm about to share with you next will transform your understanding of healing itself. Because when your breath becomes your medicine, when you learn to work with its energy to dissolve blockages and restore balance, you discover that your body already knows how to heal itself. It's just been waiting for you to remember how to activate this innate healing intelligence. Here's something that's going to shift everything you think you know about healing. Your breath isn't just air moving in and out of your lungs. It's concentrated life force energy, what the ancient traditions called prana, chi, or vital essence. And when you learn to work with your breath as energy medicine, you can literally transform the energetic patterns that create illness, limitation, and suffering. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, Joseph, this sounds too mystical. Where's the science? But here's the beautiful thing. Modern science is finally catching up to what ancient healers have known for thousands of years. Researchers have discovered that conscious breathing practices actually change your biofield, the electromagnetic energy field that surrounds and penetrates your body. Studies using sensitive electromagnetic measurement devices have shown that when people engage in conscious breathing, their biofield becomes more coherent, more organized, and more powerful. This isn't just feel-good energy talk. This is measurable science. Your breath literally changes the energetic environment in and around your body. But here's where it gets really exciting. This energetic change isn't just a side effect of breathing. It's actually the mechanism through which breath creates healing. You see, illness and limitation aren't just physical problems. They're energetic problems. They're disruptions in the natural flow of life force energy through your system. Think about it this way. When you're healthy and vibrant, energy flows freely through your body. You feel alive, energized, clear-minded, and emotionally balanced. But when energy gets stuck or blocked, that's when you start experiencing problems. Physical pain, emotional distress, mental fog, chronic fatigue, these are all signs that your life force energy isn't flowing as it should. Traditional medicine tries to fix these problems by working with the physical symptoms, and sometimes that's necessary and helpful. But breath as energy medicine works with the underlying energetic patterns that create the symptoms in the first place. When you restore healthy energy flow, the symptoms often resolve naturally because you've addressed the root cause rather than just the surface manifestation. Let me give you a concrete example of how this works. I worked with a man who'd been dealing with chronic digestive issues for years. He tried every diet, every supplement, every medical treatment available, but nothing provided lasting relief. When I taught him to work with his breath as energy medicine, we made a remarkable discovery. When he tuned into his digestive area while breathing consciously, he could actually feel where the energy was stuck. It wasn't just that his digestion wasn't working properly. The life force energy in that area of his body was literally blocked, moving sluggishly and irregularly. But here's the amazing part. When he learned to breathe energy into that area, when he asked his breath to help restore healthy energy flow to his digestive system, his symptoms began to improve dramatically. This wasn't just relaxation or stress reduction, though those were certainly part of it. This was his breath, actively moving stuck energy, dissolving energetic blockages, and restoring the natural flow of life force that his digestive system needed to function optimally. Within weeks, digestive issues that had plagued him for years were completely resolved. This is what I mean when I say your breath can become medicine. Your breath carries concentrated life force energy, and when you learn to direct this energy consciously, you can heal at levels that go far deeper than what most healing approaches can reach. But how does this actually work? How does breathing move energy and dissolve blockages? The answer lies in understanding that your breath is intimately connected to what the Chinese call your meridian system, the network of energy channels that run throughout your body. Every time you take a conscious breath, you're not just filling your lungs with air, you're pumping life force energy through these meridian channels. And when you breathe with intention, when you direct your breath's energy towards specific areas that need healing, you can actually clear blockages and restore healthy energy flow to those areas. But here's what makes breath as energy medicine so powerful. Your breath automatically knows where the energy blockages are and how to clear them. You don't need to understand the complicated maps of meridian systems or acupuncture points. Your breath's intelligence will guide the energy exactly where it needs to go. All you need to do is create the intention for healing, and then trust your breath to orchestrate the energetic restoration process. It's like having the world's most sophisticated energy healer available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this healer knows your energy system better than any outside practitioner ever could because it's been working with your energy since the day you were born. Now, let me show you how to begin working with your breath as energy medicine. The first step is learning to feel energy in your body. This might sound mysterious, but it's actually quite simple. Energy is simply life force, and you can feel it as warmth, tingling, vibration, or a sense of aliveness in different areas of your body. Start by placing your hand on your heart and taking a few conscious breaths. As you breathe, pay attention to what you feel under your hand. You might notice warmth, or a subtle vibration, or a sense of expansion with each breath. This is you beginning to feel the movement of life force energy in your body. Now try the same thing with your hand on your abdomen or on any area of your body that needs healing. Breathe consciously and notice what you feel. Don't worry if you don't feel anything dramatic at first. Energy sensitivity develops with practice, but most people can feel at least something when they start paying attention in this way. Once you can feel energy moving in your body, you can begin to work with your breath to direct and enhance this movement. If you notice an area that feels stuck or sluggish, you can breathe energy into that area. Simply imagine your breath carrying warm, healing energy directly to wherever needs attention. This isn't just visualization or imagination. You're actually using your breath to move life force energy. Your intention, combined with your breath's natural intelligence, creates a powerful healing force that can dissolve blockages and restore healthy energy flow. But here's where most people get stuck. They try to force the energy to move instead of inviting it to flow. Energy is like water. It wants to flow naturally, but it needs clear channels to move through. When you try to push energy, you actually create resistance that blocks the very flow you're trying to create. Instead, think of yourself as creating space for energy to move rather than forcing it to go where you think it should go. Breathe into areas that feel stuck, but do it with a quality of invitation rather than demand. Ask your breath to gently encourage energy flow rather than commanding it to happen. I remember working with a woman who had chronic pain in her lower back. When she first tried breathing energy into that area, she approached it like a military operation. Intense focus, forceful breathing, determined to make the energy move. But this actually increased her pain because she was creating tension rather than flow. When I taught her to breathe with a quality of gentle invitation, everything changed. She learned to breathe into her lower back like she was offering a gift rather than launching an attack. Her breath naturally began to soften and open the stuck energy in that area, and her pain gradually dissolved as healthy energy flow was restored. This gentle, inviting approach is crucial for effective energy medicine. Your body's energy systems respond much better to loving invitation than to forceful demand. When you breathe with this quality of gentle invitation, you're working with your body's natural healing intelligence rather than against it. But energy medicine goes beyond just moving stuck energy. Your breath can also help you transform the quality of energy in your system. For example, if you're carrying energetic residue from old trauma, your breath can help you clear that old energy and replace it with fresh, healing energy. This process works by breathing out what you want to release and breathing in what you want to cultivate. But it's not just a mental process. You're actually working with real energetic transformation. When you exhale old trauma energy with conscious intention, you're literally clearing that energy from your system. When you inhale healing energy with conscious intention, you're bringing new life force into your body. This is why breath as energy medicine is so effective for emotional healing. Emotions aren't just mental experiences, they're actual energy patterns in your body. Old hurt, anger, fear, and sadness create specific energetic patterns that can get stuck in your system. But your breath can help you clear these old emotional energy patterns and replace them with the energetic patterns of peace, joy, love, and vitality. The key is learning to feel the energetic quality of different emotions in your body. Anger might feel hot and tight. Sadness might feel heavy and stagnant. Fear might feel cold and constricted. Once you can feel these emotional energy patterns, you can work with your breath to transform them. For example, if you're carrying old anger energy, you can breathe into wherever you feel that hot, tight sensation in your body and ask your breath to help you release it. Then you can breathe in cooling, peaceful energy to replace what you've released. This isn't just changing how you think about the anger, this is actually transforming the energetic pattern that creates angry feelings. What's amazing about this approach is that it often resolves emotional issues much faster than traditional talk therapy because you're working directly with the energetic root of the problem rather than just analyzing it mentally. When you clear the stuck energy that's creating emotional distress, the distress naturally dissolves because you've removed what was generating it. I worked with a woman who'd been carrying deep grief from childhood losses for over 20 years. She'd done years of therapy, but the grief was still there, stuck in her chest like a heavy stone. When we worked together using breath as energy medicine, she was able to feel exactly where the grief energy was lodged in her body and how it was affecting her breathing and energy flow. Through a series of sessions where she breathed healing energy into the areas holding grief while breathing out the old stuck emotional energy, something beautiful happened. The grief began to transform. It didn't disappear. Her love for those she'd lost remained. But the heavy, stuck quality of the grief energy shifted into something lighter, more flowing, more integrated. She described it as the difference between carrying a boulder versus carrying a flower. The love and memory were still there, but they no longer created energetic blockages that limited her ability to breathe freely and live fully. Her breath had literally helped her transform the energetic pattern of her grief into something that enhanced rather than diminished her life force. But the most powerful aspect of breath as energy medicine is its ability to help you access and embody higher states of consciousness. When your energy system is clear and flowing freely, when there are no major blockages disrupting the natural movement of life force through your body, you naturally begin to experience states of consciousness characterized by peace, clarity, joy, and unlimited possibility. These aren't just pleasant feelings, these are actually higher frequency energy states that your body and mind are designed to operate from. When you're functioning from these states, healing happens naturally and effortlessly because you're aligned with the fundamental healing intelligence of life itself. Your breath is the key that unlocks access to these states because it's the bridge between your conscious mind and the deeper intelligence that orchestrates healing. When you breathe consciously, when you work with your breath as energy medicine, you're not just healing specific problems, you're raising your entire energetic frequency to levels where problems simply can't exist. This is why people who develop a deep practice of breath as energy medicine often experience healing that goes far beyond what they originally sought. They might start by working with a physical condition, but they end up transforming their entire life because they've learned to operate from a completely different energetic frequency. And here's the beautiful thing. Once you've learned to work with your breath as energy medicine, this becomes a permanent resource that's always available to you. You don't need special equipment or perfect conditions or outside practitioners. Anytime you notice stuck energy, anytime you want to clear old patterns, anytime you want to access higher states of consciousness, your breath is right there, ready to serve as your energy medicine. But what I've shared with you so far is just the foundation. The real magic happens when you learn to use your breath's energy medicine to reprogram the subconscious patterns that create limitation and suffering in your life. Because your breath doesn't just move energy in the moment, it can actually help you install new patterns at the deepest levels of your being. This is where breath as energy medicine becomes breath as transformation technology. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Because when you understand how to use your breath to reprogram your subconscious patterns, you gain access to healing and transformation possibilities that most people never dream are possible. Your breath has been waiting to show you this deeper level of its healing power. It's been waiting to teach you how to use its energy, not just to feel better in the moment, but to actually transform the underlying patterns that create your life experience. And once you understand this level of breath partnership, there's literally no limit to what becomes possible. Now that you understand how your breath can move energy and dissolve blockages, let me show you something even more profound. Your breath doesn't just work with energy in the moment. It can actually reprogram the subconscious patterns that run your life. This is where breath becomes not just medicine, but transformation technology. Here's something most people don't realize. About 95% of your daily experience is run by subconscious programs. These are automatic patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving that operate below your conscious awareness but control most of what you experience. And here's the key. These subconscious programs are energetic patterns, which means they can be transformed through energy medicine. Your subconscious mind is like a vast library of energetic templates that determine how you respond to life. You have templates for health and illness, abundance and scarcity, love and fear, confidence and insecurity. These templates were mostly programmed during your early years, when your brain was in states that made it extremely receptive to energetic imprinting. But here's what's revolutionary. Your breath can access these same receptive brain states and help you reprogram these templates as an adult. When you breathe in specific ways, you can shift your brain into the same states that allowed the original programming to happen. And in these states, you can use your breath's energy to install new patterns that support the life you want to create. This isn't just theory. Neuroscientists have discovered that specific breathing patterns can shift your brain into theta and alpha states, the same brainwave frequencies that characterize deep learning and neuroplasticity. In these states, your subconscious mind becomes remarkably receptive to new programming. But unlike the random programming that happened in childhood, you can now consciously choose what patterns you want to install. You can use your breath to program patterns of perfect health, unlimited abundance, deep peace, unshakable confidence, or any other quality you want to embody. Let me share how this works practically. Let's say you want to reprogram a pattern of chronic anxiety that's been limiting your life. First, you would use your breath to shift into a receptive brainwave state. Then you would breathe the energy of deep peace and calm into your system while your subconscious mind is open and receptive. You're literally using your breath to imprint new energetic templates that create peaceful experiences instead of anxious ones. I worked with a man who'd been struggling with financial limitation his entire life. No matter what he tried, consciously, different careers, investment strategies, business ideas, he always ended up back in the same patterns of financial stress. When we worked together using breath as transformation technology, we discovered that he had deeply programmed subconscious patterns that associated money with danger and conflict. These patterns had been installed during childhood, when money was always a source of stress and arguing in his family. His subconscious mind had learned to keep him away from money as a protection mechanism. But his conscious mind wanted financial abundance, creating constant internal conflict. Using specific breathing techniques, we helped him shift into a highly receptive brainwave state. Then we used his breath to reprogram those old patterns, breathing in new energetic templates that associated money with safety, freedom, and contribution. Within months, his external financial reality began to shift dramatically because we changed the internal patterns that were creating his experience. This is the power of using breath to reprogram subconscious patterns. You're not just trying to think differently or force yourself to behave differently. You're actually changing the energetic templates that generate your experience at the deepest levels of your being. But here's what makes this approach so effective. Your breath naturally knows how to access these receptive brain states and how to install new patterns in the most beneficial way. You don't need to understand complex neuroscience or memorize complicated protocols. Your breath's intelligence will guide the entire reprogramming process when you invite it to. The key is learning to recognize when you're in these receptive states and how to work with your breath while you're in them. These states feel different from your normal waking consciousness. They're characterized by a dreamy, spacious quality where time seems to slow down and your awareness becomes very expansive. You can learn to access these states through specific breathing patterns that naturally shift your brain waves. Slow, deep breathing with longer exhales tends to activate your parasympathetic nervous system and shift you toward alpha and theta states. Rhythmic breathing patterns can create similar effects, but the most powerful approach is to simply ask your breath to guide you into whatever state would be most beneficial for the reprogramming you want to do. Once you're in a receptive state, the reprogramming process is surprisingly simple. You breathe the energy of whatever quality you want to embody while maintaining the clear intention that this energy is being imprinted into your subconscious mind as a new template for experience. For example, if you want to reprogram patterns of low self-worth, you would breathe the energy of deep self-love and worthiness while in a receptive state, with the intention that this energy is becoming your new subconscious template for how you experience yourself. You're not just feeling self-love in the moment, you're installing it as a permanent pattern that will generate experiences of feeling worthy and valued. The beautiful thing about this process is that it's gentle and natural. You're not fighting against old patterns or trying to force change. You're simply offering your subconscious mind new options, new templates that are more aligned with what you want to experience. And because you're working with energy rather than just thoughts or words, the new patterns integrate much more quickly and completely. I've seen people reprogram patterns that they've been struggling with for decades in a matter of weeks or months using this approach. Patterns of depression, anxiety, chronic illness, relationship difficulties, financial limitation, creative blocks, all of these can be transformed when you address them at the energetic, subconscious level where they're actually generated. But here's something crucial. This reprogramming work is most effective when you approach it as a partnership with your breath rather than something you're doing to yourself. Your breath knows which patterns are ready to be transformed and which ones need more time. It knows the optimal timing for different types of reprogramming. It knows how to sequence the work so that new patterns integrate smoothly without creating internal conflict. This is why it's so important to stay in communication with your breath throughout the reprogramming process. Ask your breath what patterns are ready to be transformed. Ask it what new qualities want to be programmed in. Ask it to guide you to the optimal timing and approach for the work you want to do. Your breath will often surprise you with its wisdom about what needs to be addressed first. You might think you want to work on abundance patterns, but your breath might guide you to work on self-worth patterns first because it knows that's the foundation that needs to be solid before abundance patterns can be successfully installed. Trust your breath's guidance about the sequence and timing of transformation work. It sees the bigger picture in ways that your conscious mind often misses. It knows how different patterns are connected and which ones need to be addressed in which order for optimal results. But the most remarkable thing about using breath for subconscious reprogramming is how it transforms not just specific patterns, but your entire relationship with change itself. When you learn to work with your breath to reprogram limiting patterns, you discover that transformation doesn't have to be difficult or painful. It can be gentle, natural, and even enjoyable. This is because you're working with your body's natural change mechanisms rather than against them. Your subconscious mind is designed to update and evolve. It wants to serve your highest good, but it needs clear, energetic communication to understand what changes would be beneficial. Your breath provides exactly this kind of communication. As you develop skill in using breath for subconscious reprogramming, you'll find that transformation becomes an ongoing, natural part of your life rather than something you have to struggle to achieve. You'll learn to recognize when old patterns are ready to be updated, and you'll know how to work with your breath to install new patterns that serve your evolving vision for your life. This is living transformation, not trying to force yourself to change through willpower and discipline, but partnering with your breath's intelligence to naturally evolve into higher expressions of who you're meant to be. Your breath becomes your constant ally in becoming the person you've always known you could be. And this brings us to something beautiful. When you use your breath to reprogram limiting patterns and install empowering ones, you don't just change your internal experience, you change your external reality as well. Because your subconscious patterns generate your experiences. When you change the patterns, you change what you attract and create in your life. People who've done deep breath reprogramming work often report that their relationships improve, their health transforms, their financial situation shifts, and opportunities begin appearing that were never available to them before. This isn't just positive thinking, this is the natural result of aligning your subconscious patterns with your conscious desires. Your breath is ready to help you reprogram any pattern that's limiting your life. It's ready to help you install new templates that generate experiences of health, abundance, love, joy, and unlimited possibility. The question isn't whether this is possible. Science and experience have proven that it is. The question is whether you're ready to partner with your breath to create the transformation you've been seeking. What I've shared with you about using breath for energy medicine and subconscious reprogramming represents cutting-edge understanding of how healing and transformation actually work. But it's also ancient wisdom that's been known by healers and sages for thousands of years. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next, how this ancient wisdom can guide your modern healing journey. Here's something that might astonish you. Every major spiritual and healing tradition throughout history has recognized breath as the bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds, between the human and the divine, between limitation and unlimited possibility. The ancient Hindus called it pranayama, working with prana, the life force. The Chinese called it qigong, cultivating qi through breath. The Sufis called it the breath of the compassionate. Indigenous traditions around the world have used breath work for healing, vision quests, and spiritual awakening. But here's what's fascinating. Despite coming from completely different cultures, time periods, and belief systems, all of these traditions discovered remarkably similar truths about breath. They all recognized that breath is conscious. They all understood that breath carries life force energy. They all knew that breath could heal the body, transform the mind, and awaken the spirit. This isn't coincidence. This is recognition of fundamental truths about the nature of breath and its role in human experience. What we're rediscovering through modern science about breath's power to heal and transform has been known by our ancestors for millennia. We're not inventing new truths. We're remembering ancient wisdom that got forgotten in our rush toward technological solutions. But here's where it gets really interesting. The ancient traditions didn't just use breath for physical healing, they used it as a doorway to higher states of consciousness, to direct experience of the sacred, to union with the fundamental creative force of existence. They understood that breath is literally the presence of the divine expressing itself through human form. Think about it. The word spirit comes from the Latin spiritus, which means breath. The Hebrew word ruach means both breath and spirit. The Sanskrit word prana means both breath and life force. Across cultures and languages, our ancestors understood that breath and spirit are not separate things, they're different aspects of the same fundamental reality. This spiritual dimension of breath isn't separate from its healing power, it's the source of its healing power. When you recognize that your breath is literally spirit moving through your body, when you understand that every inhale is the universe breathing life into you and every exhale is you offering yourself back to the cosmic wholeness, your entire relationship with breath transforms. You stop seeing breath as just a biological function and start experiencing it as a sacred communion with the creative force of existence. And when you breathe from this level of understanding, when you invite spirit to breathe through you rather than just breathing air into your lungs, that's when the deepest healing becomes possible. This is what the ancient mystics knew. that healing isn't really about fixing problems or getting rid of symptoms. True healing is about remembering your connection to the infinite intelligence that created and sustains all life. And breath is the most direct pathway to that remembering, because breath is how that intelligence expresses itself through your individual form. When you breathe consciously, when you approach breath as a spiritual practice rather than just a health technique, you begin to experience what the mystics call the breath breathing you. You realize that you're not actually controlling your breath. You're allowing the universal life force to express itself through your breathing system. This shift in perspective, from I breathe to I am being breathed, opens doorways to healing that operate at levels far beyond what the mind can understand or control. Because when you allow the infinite intelligence of the universe to breathe through you, you're inviting healing wisdom that's infinitely more sophisticated than anything your personal mind could devise. I remember a profound experience I had during a period of deep spiritual practice. I was working with breath as a doorway to the sacred, and during one session, I suddenly realized that I wasn't breathing at all. I was being breathed. The universe was breathing through me, and my individual breathing was just one small expression of the cosmic breath that moves through all of existence. In that moment, I understood why the ancient traditions gave breath such central importance in their spiritual practices. They weren't just working with techniques, they were cultivating direct experience of the divine presence that moves through all life. And once you've tasted this level of connection, once you've experienced being breathed by the infinite, you can never go back to seeing breath as merely a biological function. This spiritual understanding of breath doesn't negate its healing power, it amplifies it exponentially. Because when you're working with breath as a manifestation of divine intelligence, rather than just as air moving in and out of your lungs, you're accessing healing wisdom that transcends all limitation. The ancient traditions understood that illness, suffering, and limitation are fundamentally forms of disconnection. Disconnection from our true nature, from the intelligence of life, from the sacred presence that's always available within us. And they knew that breath is the fastest, most direct way to restore that connection. When you breathe consciously with the understanding that you're communing with the divine presence within you, every breath becomes a prayer, every inhale becomes an invitation for grace to flow through you, every exhale becomes a surrender of whatever blocks that grace from expressing itself fully. This is why ancient breathwork practices often produced what appeared to be miraculous healings. The practitioners weren't just working with technique, they were working with faith, with devotion, with complete trust in the infinite intelligence that was breathing through them. They approached breath as a sacred technology for aligning with the fundamental healing power of existence itself. And this ancient understanding is just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. When you approach your breath partnership with this level of reverence, when you recognize that you're working with sacred technology rather than just therapeutic technique, you open yourself to healing possibilities that transcend what the rational mind considers possible. But here's something beautiful about this ancient wisdom. It doesn't require you to adopt any particular religious belief or spiritual practice. The divine intelligence that breathes through you is available regardless of your philosophical perspectives or cultural background. It's not about believing the right things, it's about opening to the sacred presence that's already moving through your breathing system. You can approach this spiritual dimension of breath in whatever way feels authentic to you. You might think of it as universal life force, as the intelligence of nature, as divine presence, as your higher self, or simply as the mysterious intelligence that's been keeping you alive since birth. The name doesn't matter. What matters is recognizing that your breath connects you to something infinitely larger and wiser than your individual mind. When you breathe with this recognition, when you invite this larger intelligence to guide your healing process, you're drawing on wisdom traditions that have been tested and refined over thousands of years. You're connecting with the same source of healing power that sustained our ancestors through countless challenges and transformations. And here's what's remarkable. This ancient wisdom doesn't conflict with modern scientific understanding of breath. Instead, it provides the missing piece that makes the science even more meaningful. Science shows us how breath affects our physiology, but ancient wisdom shows us why it affects our physiology. Because breath is the vehicle through which infinite intelligence expresses itself in physical form. When you combine modern scientific knowledge with ancient spiritual wisdom, when you understand both how breath works and why it works, you gain access to healing approaches that are both grounded in reality and open to miracle. You learn to work with breath in ways that honor both its mechanical functions and its sacred nature. This integration of ancient wisdom and modern understanding is exactly what we need for healing the complex challenges we face today. Our ancestors knew things about the spiritual dimensions of healing that we've forgotten, but they didn't have access to the scientific knowledge that helps us understand the mechanisms through which spirit affects matter. When we bring these two streams of knowledge together, when we approach breath as both sacred technology and scientific tool, we create possibilities for healing that neither approach could achieve alone. This is the path forward for anyone seeking deep, lasting transformation, honoring the ancient wisdom while embracing modern understanding, working with breath as both spirit and science, recognizing that the most profound healing happens when we integrate all levels of our being. But there's something else the ancient traditions understood that we're just beginning to rediscover. They knew that individual healing is inseparable from collective healing. They understood that when you heal your own breath patterns, when you restore your own connection to the sacred through conscious breathing, you're contributing to the healing of the whole human family. This isn't just metaphorical. This is how life actually works. We're all breathing the same air, sharing the same atmosphere, participating in the same planetary respiratory system. When you breathe consciously, when you clear your own energetic blockages and restore healthy patterns, you're literally changing the quality of energy you contribute to the collective field. The ancient shamans knew this. They understood that their personal healing work was also community healing work, that restoring their own connection to spirit through breath was a service to all life. And this understanding is just as relevant today as it was in ancient times. When you commit to developing a deep partnership with your breath, when you use breath for healing, transformation, and spiritual awakening, you're not just helping yourself, you're helping to restore the collective memory of what conscious breathing can do. You're contributing to a planetary awakening that's happening as more and more people remember how to work with breath as a doorway to higher consciousness. This is part of why I'm sharing this wisdom with you. Yes, I want you to experience the profound healing and transformation that conscious breath partnership can bring to your life. But I also want you to understand that your healing contributes to something much larger, the collective evolution of human consciousness toward greater wisdom, compassion, and connection with the sacred. The ancient wisdom traditions knew that we're living in times when this kind of awakening would be desperately needed. They preserved these breathing practices not just for individual benefit, but because they knew that future generations would need these tools to navigate the challenges and opportunities of a rapidly changing world. We are those future generations. We are the ones they were preserving this wisdom for. And now it's our responsibility to reclaim this ancient knowledge, to integrate it with modern understanding, and to use it for the healing of ourselves and our world. This brings us full circle to where we started, with the recognition that your breath is intelligent, conscious, and desperately wants to partner with you in creating healing and transformation. But now you understand this truth in its full context, as both scientific reality and ancient wisdom, as both personal healing tool and contribution to collective awakening. Your breath is waiting for you to step into this fuller understanding, to approach it not just as a therapeutic technique, but as a sacred technology for transformation. It's waiting for you to remember what our ancestors knew, that breath is the bridge between human and divine, between limitation and possibility, between the world as it is and the world as it could be. Now that you understand the profound spiritual heritage of conscious breathing, let me show you how to integrate this ancient wisdom into your daily life in practical, sustainable ways. Because the most powerful spiritual practice is the one you actually do consistently, the one that becomes as natural as breathing itself. The ancient traditions understood something crucial that modern life has forgotten. Spiritual practice isn't something you do for a few minutes a day and then forget about. True practice is about transforming your entire way of being, about bringing sacred awareness into every moment, about living your whole life as an expression of your highest understanding. This is especially true with breath practice. Your breath is with you every moment of every day, which means every moment is an opportunity to deepen your partnership with the sacred intelligence that's breathing through you. But most people approach breathing practice like they approach exercise, something they do at specific times in specific places when they remember to do it. What I want to share with you is something far more revolutionary: how to live in breath partnership, how to maintain an ongoing dialogue with your breath throughout your day, how to let your breath be your constant guide and companion in navigating life with greater wisdom, peace, and effectiveness. This isn't about adding more activities to your already busy schedule. This is about transforming activities you're already doing by bringing conscious breath awareness into them. This is about discovering that every moment of your life can become a doorway to deeper healing and spiritual connection. Let me start by sharing how this looks in the very beginning of your day. The ancient yogis understood that the quality of your first breath sets the tone for your entire day. They knew that how you breathe when you first wake up creates an energetic template that influences everything that follows. Most people wake up and immediately start thinking about their problems, their schedules, their worries. Their breath becomes shallow and stressed before they even get out of bed. But when you've learned to live in breath partnership, you wake up differently. Instead of immediately engaging your thinking mind, you tune into your breath. You notice how it wants to move as you transition from sleep to waking. You might express gratitude to your breath for sustaining you through the night. You might ask your breath what quality it wants to cultivate in you for the day ahead. This simple shift, starting your day in conversation with your breath rather than in conversation with your problems, changes everything. You begin each day grounded in the present moment, connected to your body's wisdom, and aligned with the sacred intelligence that wants to guide your choices and actions. From there, your morning breath conversation might naturally evolve into setting intentions for the day, but instead of just thinking about what you want to accomplish, you breathe your intentions into your being. You let your breath help you embody the qualities you want to express: patience, creativity, compassion, confidence, whatever feels most important for the day ahead. This isn't just positive thinking, this is energetic programming. When you breathe your intentions with conscious awareness, you're installing them at the cellular level, creating internal conditions that naturally support the experiences you want to have. But living in breath partnership goes far beyond morning practice. It means bringing conscious breath awareness into your daily activities, your work, your relationships, your challenges, your celebrations. It means using your breath as a constant resource for staying centered, making wise decisions, and responding to life from your highest self rather than your reactive patterns. For example, imagine you're about to enter a difficult meeting at work. Instead of holding your breath and bracing for conflict, you take a moment to communicate with your breath. You might ask it to help you stay calm and clear-minded. You might breathe in the qualities you want to embody: patience, wisdom, compassion. You might simply invite your breath to keep you connected to your center no matter what happens. This transforms how you show up for the meeting. Instead of being reactive and defensive, you're grounded and responsive. Instead of adding to the stress in the room, you become a source of calm stability. And often, your centered presence actually helps shift the entire dynamic in a more positive direction. Or imagine you're dealing with a health challenge. Instead of just taking medication and hoping for the best, you partner with your breath to support your healing process. You might breathe healing energy into the affected area of your body. You might use your breath to clear stress and tension that could be interfering with your body's natural healing processes. You might ask your breath to guide you to the lifestyle choices that would best support your recovery. This doesn't replace medical care, it enhances it. When you support medical treatment with conscious breath partnership, you're working with your body's own healing intelligence rather than just relying on external interventions. You're creating internal conditions that help your body respond more effectively to whatever treatment you're receiving. Living in breath partnership also transforms your relationships. When you're breathing consciously during conversations, you're more present, more empathetic, more able to really listen to what others are saying. You're less likely to react defensively and more likely to respond with wisdom and compassion. I remember working with a couple who was on the verge of divorce. Their communication had become so reactive and defensive that they couldn't have a simple conversation without it turning into an argument. When I taught them to breathe consciously during their interactions, everything changed. They learned to pause and breathe before responding to each other. They learned to ask their breath for help and staying open-hearted even when they felt triggered. They learned to use their breath to release reactions that weren't serving their relationship. Within weeks, they were communicating with more love and respect than they had in years. This is the power of bringing breath partnership into your relationships. You stop reacting from old patterns and start responding from wisdom. You become a healing presence in other people's lives because you're breathing from a place of centeredness and love. But perhaps the most transformative aspect of living in breath partnership is how it changes your relationship with stress and challenge. Instead of seeing difficult situations as problems to be solved or avoided, you start seeing them as opportunities to deepen your partnership with your breath and discover new levels of resilience and wisdom. When challenges arise, and they always do, you don't face them alone. You face them in partnership with the infinite intelligence that's breathing through you. You have access to wisdom, strength, and creativity that goes far beyond your personal resources. You discover that there's literally no situation that you and your breath can't navigate together with grace and wisdom. This doesn't mean life becomes easy or that you never face difficulties. It means you develop the internal resources to meet whatever life brings with increasing skillfulness and peace. You learn to surf the waves of life rather than being knocked down by them. The key to making this transition from occasional breath practice to living in breath partnership is to start small and build gradually. You don't need to transform your entire life overnight. You just need to begin bringing conscious breath awareness into 1 or 2 daily activities and let the practice naturally expand from there. Maybe you start by breathing consciously while you're driving, using your commute time to deepen your connection with your breath rather than just listening to the radio or stressing about traffic. Maybe you start by taking 3 conscious breaths before meals, using that moment to express gratitude and set intentions for nourishing your body well. Maybe you start by breathing consciously during your evening routine, using your breath to help you release the stress of the day and prepare for restorative sleep. The specific activities don't matter as much as the consistency of practice and the quality of attention you bring to it. What matters is that you're beginning to weave conscious breath awareness into the fabric of your daily life. You're starting to experience your breath not as something that just happens in the background, but as an active partner in creating the life you want to live. As this partnership deepens, you'll find that your breath begins to guide you in ways that go far beyond what you initially expected. It might guide you to make dietary changes that support your health. It might guide you to shift your work schedule in ways that honor your natural rhythms. It might guide you to new relationships or creative projects that align with your soul's purpose. This is because your breath is connected to the deepest wisdom of your being. It knows not just what you need for physical health, but what you need for emotional fulfillment, mental clarity, and spiritual growth. When you live in partnership with your breath, you're essentially living in partnership with your own highest wisdom. But the most beautiful aspect of living in breath partnership is how it transforms your understanding of what's possible. When you're constantly connected to the infinite intelligence that's breathing through you, when you're regularly experiencing the sacred presence that moves through every breath, you start to realize that limitation is largely an illusion created by disconnection from your true nature. You begin to understand that you're not just a small, separate individual struggling to survive in a hostile world. You're an expression of the same creative intelligence that moves the stars, grows the forests, and orchestrates the incredible complexity of life on this planet. And that intelligence is always available to you through your breath. This realization doesn't make you grandiose or unrealistic. It makes you humble and empowered at the same time. Humble, because you recognize how small your personal mind is compared to the infinite intelligence you're connected to. Empowered, because you realize that this infinite intelligence is always working through you when you allow it to. Living in breath partnership is ultimately about learning to live as a conscious collaborator with the creative force of existence itself. It's about discovering that your individual life is not separate from the larger movement of life, but is a unique and valuable expression of it. And when you live from this understanding, when your daily life becomes a constant conversation with the sacred intelligence that breathes through you, that's when the most profound healing and transformation becomes possible. Because you're no longer trying to heal or transform yourself through personal effort alone. You're allowing the healing wisdom of life itself to work through you. This is the invitation your breath has been extending to you your entire life. This is the partnership it's been waiting to develop with you. And now that you understand what's possible, now that you know how to listen for your breath's wisdom and respond as a conscious partner, everything can change. Your breath is ready to guide you into a life of greater health, deeper peace, more authentic relationships, and unlimited creative expression. The question is, are you ready to say yes to this partnership? Are you ready to let your breath show you what becomes possible when you live in conscious collaboration with the intelligence that created and sustains all life? The choice is yours. But your breath will be there either way, waiting patiently for the moment when you're ready to remember the conversation that can transform everything. Now let me share with you some of the most remarkable transformations I've witnessed when people fully embrace this breath partnership and begin living from this place of constant connection with their inner wisdom. Because what I've described so far is just the foundation. When you truly commit to this path, when you let your breath become your primary guide and teacher, that's when the real miracles begin to unfold. I want to tell you about Sarah, a woman who came to me 3 years ago completely broken by chronic illness. She'd been diagnosed with multiple autoimmune conditions, was taking over 20 medications daily, and had been told by numerous specialists that her best hope was to manage her symptoms and prevent further deterioration. She was 34 years old and felt like her life was over. When Sarah first learned about breath partnership, she was skeptical but desperate enough to try anything. She started with simple conversations with her breath, just asking it to help her get through each day with a little less pain and a little more energy. But something remarkable happened as she began to truly listen to what her breath was telling her. Her breath started guiding her to make changes that no doctor had ever suggested. It guided her to eliminate certain foods that were creating inflammation, even though her allergy tests had shown no sensitivity to those foods. It guided her to change her sleep schedule in ways that supported her body's natural healing rhythms. It guided her to release old emotional patterns that she'd been carrying since childhood trauma. But most importantly, her breath guided her to a deeper understanding of her illness. Through their ongoing conversations, Sarah began to understand that her autoimmune conditions weren't just random biological malfunctions. They were her body's way of trying to protect her from energetic and emotional patterns that were no longer serving her. High is good. As Sarah learned to work with her breath to release these old patterns and install new ones aligned with health and vitality, her physical symptoms began to improve dramatically. Within 6 months, she was able to reduce her medications by more than half. Within a year, she was medication-free and symptom-free for the first time in over a decade. But here's what's even more remarkable. Sarah's transformation didn't stop with her physical health. As she continued to live in breath partnership, every area of her life began to transform. She left a job that had been draining her energy and started a business doing work she was passionate about. She ended a relationship that had been built on codependency and attracted a partner who supported her highest growth. She developed creative abilities she never knew she had, and began expressing herself in ways that brought her tremendous joy. This is what I mean when I say that breath partnership can transform your entire life. When you're constantly connected to the wisdom that's breathing through you, when you're living in ongoing dialogue with the intelligence that knows your highest potential, every aspect of your existence begins to align with your true purpose and greatest good. Or let me tell you about Michael, a successful businessman who seemed to have everything: wealth, status, a beautiful family, but was secretly struggling with depression and a growing sense that his life had no real meaning. He'd achieved every goal he'd set for himself, but instead of feeling fulfilled, he felt empty and disconnected. When Michael began working with breath partnership, his breath immediately started showing him that his external success was built on patterns of disconnection from his authentic self. His breath guided him to recognize that he'd been living his entire adult life trying to meet other people's expectations rather than honoring his own deepest values and desires. Through ongoing conversations with his breath, Michael began to understand what truly mattered to it. His breath guided him to make significant changes in his business practices, shifting from a focus on maximum profit to a focus on meaningful contribution. It guided him to completely transform his relationship with his family, moving from being a provider who was always absent to being a present, emotionally available partner and father. Most remarkably, Michael's breath guided him to discover creative talents he'd suppressed since childhood. He began writing music again, something he hadn't done since college. The songs that emerged from his breath-inspired creativity were so powerful and authentic that they caught the attention of recording industry professionals, and he now has a parallel career as a musician that brings him more joy than his business success ever did. Michael's transformation illustrates something crucial about breath partnership. It doesn't just heal what's broken, it reveals and nurtures what's been hidden. Your breath knows not just what you need to release, but what you need to embrace. It knows not just how to heal your wounds, but how to activate your gifts. Then there's Elena, a woman in her 60s who'd spent her entire life caring for others and had completely lost touch with her own needs and desires. When her last child left home and her marriage ended, she found herself completely lost with no idea who she was or